In this movie, I'm going to go over processing posted data with Formr, making sure that we have required fields and that they've been filled in, validating email addresses and passwords, and working with any error or success messages that we may have. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is check to see if the form has actually been submitted. So this is pretty easy. So we're just saying if the form has been submitted, we're using Formr's submit method, then let's go ahead and echo success, and that way we'll see if the form's actually being submitted. And it is. Okay, great. So instead of doing something like that though, Formr has a method for displaying messages, whether it's error messages or success messages or info or warning messages, whatever, and that's the messages method. Okay, now you can put this anywhere you like. It doesn't have to be after, here. I mean, it has to be after the form has been submitted, but you can put it, down in the bottom of your HTML or whatever, because if there's nothing in any of the messages, if the message array is empty, it's just going to print nothing to the screen. So you don't have to worry about that. You can use it for all sorts of different messaging within Formr. So let's go ahead and submit the form again and see what happens. Nothing. That's because Formr knows that the form's being submitted, but it doesn't know what we want to do with that. So what we need to do then is start putting our fields that we submit into variables. So let's start with the first name field. So we're going to use the post method, and that accepts 3 parameters. The first one being the field name or the key. In this case, it's fname. So let's go ahead and submit. Nothing happens. Let's go ahead and put a name in there, and still nothing happens. Well, we're getting the information, we're just not seeing it because we're not doing anything with it. So let's go ahead and echo that and see what happens. Okay, great. Sure enough, we know that it's being put into this variable and it's being submitted and so forth. So good. Okay, so what if we want to make the first name field submitted and the user doesn't fill it out? Because we could do it blank right now and nothing happens. Well, instead of saying it's submitted down here, instead of coding that it's submitted here, we only need to do this in one place, and we do that in the required property. All right, so we'll just say fname. We'll put the field name in the required property. Now let's go ahead and submit. And sure enough, it says the fname field is required, and since we're using Bootstrap, it gives us the visual indicator as well. But fname is not very descriptive, right? The users may not know what the fname field is, especially if they're colorblind. So in the second property, right here, or the second argument I should say, we can go ahead and put in a human readable string, something that's a little bit more descriptive. First name. Okay, so now let's submit it, and now it says first name is required. It's a little robotic, especially on other fields with other names, like state. It would say, like state is required, and that might be okay, but if you want to be a little bit softer in your error messages, we can put in a pipe character as a delimiter and then type in something that's a little bit more appropriate. Okay, let's go ahead and submit, and sure enough, there's our error messages. So we don't have to bother with setting these up in different functions or different files or scripts or anything else. We can just do it right here when we're accepting the post data. So now that we know that this is required, let's go ahead and type something in there and see if we get the same message. No, we didn't. Okay, so what if we want to make the last name field required? Well, we can just type a comma in here, and now we have the first name and the last name fields required. We've filled in the first name, so we should get an error message on the last name, and we did not. Why? Well, because Formr doesn't know that we actually want to track the last name. We need to set it up in here and track it through the post method. So we'll do lname, and okay, now let's submit, and sure enough, now we get an error message. Okay, so this obviously can get very tedious. If you have a really big form, maybe 30 or 50 fields or something like that, you don't want to have to sit there and type all of this in, right? Right. So instead of having to type in every single field separated by a comma, if we want to make all fields required, we just put in an asterisk. Now let's go ahead and just submit those two, and there you go. So it's real simple to make all fields required. What if we don't want all fields required? What if we want all fields but country? Well, first off, we have to go and track country. And just for brevity, just going to do that. Okay. So let's go ahead. Now we got all fields required except for, well, all fields required, I should say. All right, so now it says that last name is empty and country is required. So again, what if we want to make all fields required except country? Well, we can just put in country, the field name, and then surround it with the parentheses. And now we'll go ahead and submit, and sure enough, only the last name field is required at this point because that's the only one that we're tracking along with the first name, and country is not required. So we can do the same as we did with fname and lname and just do a comma separated string, and we'll just say country and fname are not required, submit the form, and sure enough, just the last name. So you see how fast and easy it is to make one field required all but one, all but a couple. You know, it's really fast and really, really simple to be able to do this. Now the next thing that we're going to want to do is check on an array. Let's just go ahead and skip over some of the validation and just get into array since we're processing fields right now. So we want to get our hobbies array and see what the user selected for that. So we'll do the same thing as we did with the other ones. Okay, and let's make nothing required. We'll just get rid of that and go ahead and submit the form. Nothing happens. We'll submit the form again. All right, we're getting our information into this array right here, but we're not printing it out. So let's go ahead and print that out. We're going to use a print R function, but Formr has its own little helper method in here. And we're going to pass it hobbies. Now we should see our array. So there's our hobbies array. Fishing and hiking are the ones that were selected. We'll do camping and fishing. And so that's how easy it is to post and get arrays without having to write out a bunch of code and do loops and things like that. It's really fast and really simple. Okay. Oh, and one other thing with print R, you can pass this any array. So we can just go ahead and pass this post. Just type in some gibberish there, and it'll show us all of the stuff that's been submitted. So that's really helpful in doing your debugging as well, building the form and debugging it. Okay, so now let's go ahead and discuss some validation. Let's validate our email address. So I'll change this to email. And we'll go ahead and just say email, and our third parameter is where we put in our validation rules. So we're going to ask for a valid email. And let's go ahead and let me submit it with a bunch of gibberish first. All right, so we didn't even have to make this required. Formr is just telling us, hey, we need a valid email address whether it's required or not. So let's go ahead and put in a valid email address. Sure enough, that works. Great. So we know that we're getting it. We know that it's validating. So let's go ahead and validate our passwords now. And in this one, what we're going to want to do is make sure that that the user has entered in enough characters. So we're going to say that the password is minimum 6. So we're going to use we're going to type in min length, and then within brackets we're going to put in the amount of characters that we need this to be minimum. So I'm just going to enter in 3, hit submit, and it says, hey, password must be at least 6 characters. So if I put in 6, that works. Great. Okay, so now, you know, I'm going to do one other thing. I want to show you one other thing that we can do before I go on. We're going to hash the password as well. So we can do SHA-1 if we want, or MD5, or we could use PHP's password hash function. So I'm going to go ahead and now hash this password, and I'm going to print it out for us as well. So let's go ahead and put something in here for password, just anything, submit it, and there's our hash. So you can see how fast and easy that is as well. Okay, now let's go ahead and confirm our password. Okay, we're going to leave it at minimum 6 length. And what we want to do now is we want to make sure that the password field and the confirm password field match. So we're just going to type in matches password, the field name. If you guys are familiar with CodeIgniter, then this is going to be right at home to you. All right, so let's go ahead and save this. Get rid of the email address. I'm going to type in 6 1s and then 6 2s. Submit. And sure enough, it's saying that it doesn't match. So you can see how easy it is at this point to just go ahead and make fields required and grab the information from the post superglobal, validate email addresses, passwords, hash them, and all that. So there's one other thing that I want to show you, and that has to do with messages and errors. So just doing this with our form is not enough. We're going to want to send an email or put something into a database. Now, Formr doesn't do either of those, but it makes it pretty simple for you to check to see if there are any errors and then do something appropriate with them. So all we do is check if, and we just say if no errors, then what? We'll go ahead and echo success. And okay, so no errors. So echoing success is kind of lame. So why don't we make something that's a little nicer looking and do a success message. So we'll use the success message method. We also have a warning message, error message, and info message. All right, and so what we're going to do here is we're going to pass this string into the success message method, which is then going to get printed out here in our messages method. Great. So we can do this. Now we can do something with the database right here. Send an email or whatever you want to do, and then throw out a success message. So that pretty much sums up the basics of what you need to do in order to get your posted data into variables and arrays. Check for fields, make them required, make them not required, error messages, success messages, so on and so forth. Most of the time when I use Formr, this is all I need to do. There's other things that you can do here, but this covers probably about 99% of what I have to do. And it just makes it so fast and so easy for me to be able to do all of this kind of stuff. And I hope that it really helps you as well.